Hey folks, this is Boz with Any Which War Game, and I'm joined today by a minis creator called Skeaze. So Skeaze, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
So first of all, you're creating miniatures for Mystic Space, which is Nordic Weasel Games' new game. Can you tell me a little bit about kind of your background in wargaming? Like, what do you play? When did you get into it? That sort of thing?
Yeah. Currently, the only thing I'm really playing is Mystic Space. I don't get it. I don't get a ton of time to play games. But I've always been more into the like modeling, like painting and modeling kind of side of the hobby, but also still actually play games a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, I started when I was young. Uh, I remember as almost, really, really young kid. I remember looking at I would go past like the game store in the mall and they had like a display window with like painted miniatures. And I would go in and I'd look at the box art and all the Warhammer boxes and
Yeah.
stuff. And then finally, when I was like 12 years old, I met a guy who gave me my first two actual miniatures. It was like two metal black orcs when I was like 12 years old. And then sort of at first when I was like a teenager, I was more into like Warhammer Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I played a few games, not really a lot, but I collected a small orcs and goblins army, and I've started like modeling and sculpting stuff physically pretty early on. I tried converting it was like one of the starter sets for like seventh edition maybe that had goblins and dwarves.
Yep.
And I tried converting all the dwarves into chaos dwarves. I like sculpted like the beards and the chaos helmets onto the dwarves with like green stuff and stuff. So I started getting into sculpting pretty early too when I was still pretty young. But then I realized that Warhammer Fantasy was not an amazing game system to play. It's kind of clunky and took a long time. You'd roll 10 billion dice.
Yeah, it's a whole afternoon's worth of game, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so my like high school friends and I started looking into like other random kind of more indie games to play that were maybe like faster and easier. We played Mordheim a little bit. We played other like random. There weren't like back then. This was like early 2000s. There weren't a lot of like easy to find like indie war games, right? There's like a few things on the internet like Dirt Side or something. I don't know that we
Yeah.
that we like found
Yeah,
that
back in
was like
those early
okay.
days of the internet where there wasn't, your war game vault or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. It was like pre-war game vault, and so
Hmm.
I experimented with lots of random games in kind of my younger years, and then I played War Master a lot actually because the PDF for that was free online, and I had like a roommate that I convinced to play it, and we cut out cardboard rectangles and drew the units on and played War Master on like the floor
Yeah,
because we didn't
nice.
have a table that was big enough. And then at some point I didn't. I mean, I had my old Warhammer miniatures, but I was like really poor, and I couldn't just be affording to buy miniatures because I was like a college student. And I realized that 15 millimeter scale was a thing, because and the minis are a lot cheaper. And that's when like I discovered like War Game Vault kind of in the earlier years, and a lot of Nordic Weasels early games.
Yeah.
Like I started like when the Starport Scum very first came out. I started playing that quite a bit, and I played a few games of that, or quite a few games of that, and that's how I kind of got acquainted with like Ivan and Nordic Weasel Games.
Yeah.
And I did some play testing and stuff for some of his other games years ago. Like there's one called Unity Field Agent
Yes, I
that
got
I
that.
that I
Love
play
that.
tested a bunch. Which for some reason that game it didn't seem to ever really take off, but it had a fun like the card activation mechanic I thought was really cool.
Yeah,
It
it,
was
it
it was
just it just
very
and I liked the fleshed out setting as well. I love the Unity setting
mhm.
and it bleeds into so many of his other games. And yeah, it never really gained traction, did it?
Yeah. So I play tested that game quite a bit when he was writing and releasing that game. And then I don't know, I kind of like dropped off wargaming for a few years from there. I got into more just like RPGs. I was playing a lot of uh like D&D and like like OSR scene stuff for a while, and then my like RPG group kind of fizzled out, and I was like, man, I want to get back into like wargaming and stuff again. And this is a few years ago, and I decided to get a 3D printer
Yes.
because that was the new hot thing.
Oh
And
yes.
so I got a Anycubic Photon Mono 4K
Yep.
right when those had just come out,
A solid
and
printer.
it's small, but it's really solid. It works really good, and it's running great years later. But like that just like cracked open the hobby to me. Like it was like amazing. Like I was like I could just make what I started with like, oh, before I bought the printer, I was like, should I buy this? And I was looking online for like STLs, like free STLs on like
Yep.
Thingiverse and Cults and stuff. And I was like, wow, there's like a ton of good stuff here. So I'm gonna get the printer. I got the printer, and then pretty soon, pretty quickly after printing a handful of things, I got into like, oh, there's like they call it like remixes in like
Yes.
online space. It's like a kit bash, right? A digital
Essentially,
kit
yeah.
bash.
Digital kit bash.
Digital kit bash. And I started, I was like, oh, well, I would, I would do tons of converting and sculpting myself physically. And I want to do that digitally. And so I started pretty soon after getting a 3D printer, started like kit bashing my own stuff from other people's files. And I already knew how to, I use Blender is the 3D software that I use.
Yep.
I'd already used Blender a little bit previously. My wife and I have done a couple small forays into like video game design,
Oh,
and
okay.
so I'd already previously used Blender a little bit for like 3D making 3D models for video games, and so I was already kind of familiar with how it worked. And so I started kit bashing stuff digitally in Blender, and I started with like 40K stuff because that's kind of what there is. There's bazillions of files out there for 40K.
Yeah.
So I started kit bashing 40K files, and I was converting them into like 15 millimeter scale because that's what most of my miniatures are. And so I was kind of like rescaling and reproportioning them, like making their heads bigger and weapons bigger so they stand out at the smaller scale. And they just kind of like simple stuff like that at first, just like rescaling and reproportioning stuff and reposing stuff. And that just sort of steadily evolved into, okay, well, I want to make a certain model, but I need to kind of like make my own part that doesn't exist for it. So I got to model that myself from scratch, and that evolved into, well, I'm modeling half of this from scratch with half of other parts from other people that I'm kit bashing into. Eventually, I was like, okay, well, I just want to make my own things entirely from scratch, my own complete models myself. And then that just so happened to be, it was almost like a year ago now, and I was getting back into like the Nordic Weasel Discord server and community and looking at what games and stuff he was coming out with now. And he came out with the first little teaser trailer, I don't know, like blog post for
Yeah.
Mystic Space. And I was thinking at the time, like, okay, I want to start sculpting my own stuff digitally and just making my own, things from scratch. And I kind of want to move away from just 40K because I'm kind of bored of that. I'm not really into the 40K scene. That's just kind of what
It's kind of the
was
default,
there.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of the default. I was like, but I want to
Yeah.
kind of start doing something different, something new, maybe, but I don't really know what I want to start making. Like, I want to make something, but I don't know what I want to make. And then he comes out with this thing for his new setting. It's like a brand new setting, and he has, oh, and here's my idea for this new license that's going to go with it. And I was like, oh, well, that's it. That's what I, that's what I'm going to make now. It's like the
Yeah.
perfect thing. I was looking for something new, something interesting, creative wise to start modeling, and that's right when Mystic Space started happening. So it's like, oh well, I want to do this now. So
And
that's
you're
how it started.
yeah, and you're really filling a niche at the moment because to my knowledge, there's nothing else out there that's modeled for Mystic Space. You've got some models for the Promised, for Terrahold, and for the Apex, all of which I've sampled and printed out. I've got a whole bunch of new painting that I need to do now, so thank you very much for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
But yeah, as far as I know, there's no other purpose-built minis for the game yet, as it's still, super duper hot off the presses. It's still in alpha.
Yeah. Well, I mean, since I was already like in kind of the playtesting community, right? I started. I got a kind of a jump. So even before the alpha was released, I was already
Yeah.
making stuff, right? Because I kind of knew it was there. But yeah, I was like, hopefully that gives me kind of a an edge in the market, I guess you could say.
Well, it definitely should, because as I said, I don't think there's anything else out there that's specifically for Mystic Space, and I think it's such a cool setting, and I think the mechanics of the game are solid, and hopefully it gains some traction and takes off, and if it does, you're poised to be kind of at least one of the go-tos. for, okay, so here's some models specifically for this game. I've got a very good idea of what a spark gun looks like now because I've got three examples from you of what a spark gun looks like. So in my head, that's now what that looks like.
Hmm.
So, what is it about Mystic Space that draws you to it? What do you think it is about it that you like so much?
Well, like you just said, the setting is very unique and interesting. A lot of sci-fi stuff seems to recently have either devolved into just like, I don't know, just kind of like generic anything goes. It's like Star Wars. There's just humans and aliens, all just kind of everything on, or it's 40K, but not 40K. Like one page rules is like, oh, it's there's space knights and space elves and space orcs, and you're just like, okay, yeah, that's that's the same thing. Just copying.
Similar to, but legally distinct from.
Yeah. So I like that it's something that's totally different from that. I think that like creative wise, having like restrictions on the setting is better for like creativity. I'm trying to think how to word that. But having a restriction forces you to be more creative. And I liked immediately he said, well, there's only humans,
Yeah,
right? There's alien creatures, but as far as intelligent
there's no
species,
other
it's just humans.
sentience. Yeah,
Yeah, there's no sentience, and so that's like I think that's a really fun like creative restriction that pushes you to think in a different, more creative way, which I really like. I also like that I'm kind of I they did Ivan and they did the Bad Internet Friends podcast, and I felt called out. They talked about being anti-popular hipsters. And that's kind of what I am sometimes.
Huh.
And so I saw the idea was like, oh, well, like everything's all like grim dark and grungy and dark, and that's the thing right now. And Ivan specifically was like, no, this it's like very heroic and like bright colors and you know
Yeah.
shiny and dramatic and sort of like space romantic space opera. And I was like, yeah, I want to do something that's like against what all the other games are doing
Yeah,
right now.
and
I
it's
think
ho
that's fun.
and he specifically mentions, this isn't a place that's plunged into endless war. That there's hope. This is a hopeful kind of setting.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've printed out and painted some vassals now, just in their kind of two colors without any highlights or detail or anything, and it's really quite striking how bold and colorful they are. I
Hmm.
don't think I'll do a whole bunch of weathering on them because I want them to be these kind of bright things.
Yeah, that's what I mean, you can see on like my like Colts page, I have some pictures of the ones that I've already printed and painted myself.
Mm,
And I decided purposely to do with like a very old school paint style. A lot of other stuff I'd been doing, like the slap chop method with
yeah,
lots of like dry brushing, washes, contrast paints. And I was like, I think for these ones I got to do just like an old school like 80s, 90s style, just like plain base coat colors, just like bright colors, highlights, just the old style because it really
yeah.
pops. And it's kind of a pain in the butt. It takes a lot longer than just slap chopping stuff.
Well, yeah, that's right. That's the
But
big advantage of Slapshot. You're going to get it done quicker.
yeah,
But yeah, it certainly suits a certain style, doesn't it?
yeah. The result is really good. Especially annoying as I did the Promised, which is white and blue. So painting like half their armor white's always kind of a fiddly color to paint,
Yeah.
and look good.
Once you spill over onto that white, that's it. That's never white ever again.
Oh yeah, you gotta like recover it with like three more coats to get it
Yeah.
back white again. So it's kind of tedious, but the result is what I wanted. Very bright, shiny, heroic looking
Yeah.
models.
And because I game in 28 mil, all of my terrains in 28 mil and all that, what I did with your stuff is I scaled it up 175%. I got a STL for, I think it was a Human Defense Force guard from one page rules and just kind of stuck it next to yours and played with it until I got it about right. And yeah, I found at about 175% the proportions were pretty good and the heroes were still kind of taller and stockier as well, especially the hero for the Apex, who's this big chunker. And yeah,
Hmm.
Yeah, to anyone out there who's thinking of printing your minis but doesn't play in 15 mil, jack them up 175% and they will fit right in with 28 mil scenery. And yeah, I'm just
Hmm.
really impressed with the quality of what yours look like. They look better than a lot of stuff that I'm seeing from other places that charge quite a lot for their STLs. It's, you've been doing this for a while, I can tell.
Oh, thank you. I think, I mean, this is part of it's a personal preference. Mine are very, you'll probably know, they're very chunky, right? The details are very like almost like cartoonish,
Oh
right?
yeah, they're not true scale at all, but that's
Oh
fine.
no, yeah, they're very heroic scaled, especially because I made them for 15 millimeters, so they're extra small. But I mean, part of it is I print all my own models and paint or try to paint most of them, right? So when I first started making models at the beginning, it was like, oh, I could tell this is too small, this bit's too fiddly, it's too much of a pain to paint, so I got to make that bigger next time. And so I try to, hone that in to where it's like it's fun and easy to paint, which is maybe part of it. I also think I have this is a random pet peeve of mine with like digital sculptors. A lot of times you have the render image looks really nice on your screen when it's zoomed in, but then when you print it out and it's like 3 feet away from you on the table, it's like real fiddly and you just can't see what's going on. So I try to like make it very it's the models I make, I intend it to be you're holding this at arm's length. You're looking at it on a table as a game piece, so it should stand out and pop and look good from
Yeah,
a
and
distance.
I'm currently holding up one of my, I think it's one of the Apex, and yeah, it's got kind of 4 or 5 distinct areas to paint that are kind of nice and blocky and also nice and detailed. You know, the primary color, the secondary color, a bit of metal and a bit of highlight, and that's going to really pop from, you know, kind of this distance, this
Hmm.
tabletop distance. So I'm wondering, what are you working on next? Which army's coming out next? Because so far I've got a skirmish force for 3 of the factions. So
Hmm.
what are you working on?
Oh, that's actually a problem because I don't know. Like, so originally when I started modeling them, they were all very similar, right? Like the factions, like okay, I'm going to make all the factions. I'm just going to have like some swipes, like they're going to have like different helmets and maybe different shaped shoulder pads and stuff to kind of make them distinct. But because the way the rules system works, if anyone's listening to this who hasn't read it yet, you should go buy the rules and read it. The factions don't have different units; they all have the same units that they can choose from, but they have like different faction abilities that tweak the army's playstyle just a little bit. So thinking, oh well, since it's all the same units, I'll have the same units, but just kind of change them a little bit. But then the more like lore and background, uh, Ivan and his wife, who's writing a lot of the lore, the more background they started publishing in the updates of the book, the more I
Hmm.
was like, oh man, the factions like they have so much more distinct character and they have
Yes.
like so much different flavor and background behind them. I really need to like I want to make them more different than I was originally planning. So right now, I have I've written up kind of like a concept map idea of where I want to go with some of the other factions, and it's kind of a toss up, sort of right now between either Deadwake, the Fallen, or the Orphans
I was
are the
hoping
three that
they'd be in there.
I'm not because those are the ones I have a pretty clear idea of where I want to go
Yeah.
with those ones for the the Pathfinders and shoot, what's the one I just didn't say? Verdant Hand.
Hmm.
I don't have as strong of an idea of where I want to go, but for Deadwake, Fallen, and Orphans, I've got a pretty clear idea of how I want to do it. I just need to like start actually 3D modeling them right now.
So I'm
So
really looking forward to your take on the orphans. Of all the factions, I think they're the ones that I'm most drawn to in terms of their
mhm.
background and their lore.
My idea for the Orphans actually is single word spikes, because they're about like reactive defense, right? Like they wait for the enemy to attack them and then like attack back. Like they're about like counter attacking and
Yeah.
counter aggression. And in my mind, like having spikes kind of embodies that. They're like a hedgehog, right? Like you come attack me, but then I'm gonna mess you up back, right? And so obviously, so my idea for them is to have kind of like have them have like spiky armor bits, but very also like very mismatched, right? Because that's kind of part of their lore is they're people that came from different factions,
Yeah, yeah.
and
They
so
they probably won't all be uniformly uniform, will they?
exactly, which is a fun idea, but that means it takes more time
Oh,
to model them
exactly,
all.
exactly.
so So, like, having, like, lots of mismatched armor, maybe just, like, stealing, like, the helmets that I've already and armor shoulder pads and whatever that I've already made for the
Yeah,
different factions, and mix and matching them all kinda together, and kinda adding, like I said, some more, like, spiky, angry-looking bits, to kinda signify that they're very, like, they're sort of, like, reactive counterattack sort of
yeah,
style of fighting where, like, they're you if you come and attack them, they're gonna hurt you back. So
yeah.
I would like sort of give them that kind of like a vibe, I guess.
So, what kind of time frame are you working on in terms of how long it takes you to put out? Say the promised, you've got 10 odd light armored, about the same heavy armored, and you've got a hero as well. How long would that have taken you to model?
It takes me a couple of months.
Yep.
I don't work very fast because I have like a full time job and stuff, right? It's not what I'm doing full time right now. I have a job. I have a family. I've got little kids, and so I don't get a ton of time to really work on it um, every day usually. Uh, Luckily, for you and other fans of the game or my models, I'm a school teacher, and right now we're about to go on summer break. So I'll have a couple months where I'll have a lot more time than usual, and hopefully get some stuff out. But yes, those ones, yeah, like the Promised and the guys that I've already released have taken me several months to
Hmm.
work on to get those. A lot of those you'll notice a lot of them have very similar pieces. Like I
Yes.
reused like the arms and the legs are basically the same on all of them. I just changed like the torsos, the helmets, the backpacks, the shoulder pads, some of the weapons, but like the arms and legs are kind of the same. I cheat a little bit and reuse certain parts just to speed the process up.
Oh, and there's nothing wrong with that either because it's going to be kind of the same throughout a real life force anyway. They're going to be issued mostly the same stuff and whatnot. And I do notice that in pretty much every squad, there's at least one left-hander as well.
I do that on purpose.
Yes.
I,
It,
I'm sometimes I'm weird about details, and so I'm like, okay, on average, I don't remember this. It's like one in every 10 people is left-handed, or
yeah,
one in every, I don't know what the number is. It's like 10 or 15% of people in real life are left-handed. So I make approximately that many of my models left-handed.
it's funny. I do exactly the same thing when I've got my minis in the slicer. I always mirror at least one of them.
Hmm.
Just yeah, it's one of my things as well.
Yep, there you go.
So I noticed when I was downloading all of your stuff from Cults 3D that most of it is a kind of pay what you want type thing.
Hmm.
I think there was only one unit that was and it was, a couple of bucks or something like that.
Hmm.
Do you think moving forward you're going to keep your releases like that, or are you going to start kind of trying to make a bit of money out of this lovely side hustle you got going?
Yeah. The idea right now is part of it is I have maybe some amount of like I guess maybe it's imposter syndrome, right? Like I don't know if it's like is it good enough that I should be charging a lot of money for it? Really, I don't know. So I'm doing a lot of stuff. Pay what you want. Eventually, I would be nice to make more money off of it. Uh, Obviously. So what I've I'm not super into I don't know like business and financial stuff. I don't know what a good business plan is.
Hmm.
But the idea is like, start by releasing a lot of just free pay what you want stuff, then maybe transition, like you're saying, into like maybe increasing more and more
Hmm.
paid stuff. Um, I'm not 100% sure. I've also considered doing just like a Patreon kind of a thing that seems to be effective for a lot of people,
Yeah.
but like I said, I'm not super into sales and finance and marketing strategies. I don't know how that what's the best way to do that.
Well, I guess at the moment you're doing it because you want to do it and you'd be doing it anyway.
Yeah.
That's always something that you can visit further on down the line.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, really, yeah, the stuff that I make right now, I'm not trying to like chase whatever's popular. Otherwise, I'd just be making 40K ripoffs, right? The whole
You
time.
you and 50,000 other people, yes.
Yeah, I'm just making models like I wanted to make. Like I wanted to play this game. I want to make models for it. So,
I
but
think I
yeah,
think I think that's really cool. Like I've had a bit of a play around in Blender and I find the learning curve is quite steep. And
mhm.
I've yet to kind of come out the other end with something that I'm looking at and going, yeah, I could actually print that and play with it. It's much more blocky.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, that's why when I started, I was just doing like really basic remixes. Like, okay,
Hmm.
I'm gonna move his head around and rescale it. Right? It was like really simple stuff. But then from there, you work up more and more. The good thing about if you're just doing Blender for making tabletop miniatures is you don't really have to worry about a lot of the stuff. Would say when you're modeling like for video game characters, you have to worry about like the exact topography of the polygons and stuff and how many there are and how they will bend when but in a tabletop miniature that doesn't really matter, so you can kind of ignore a lot of stuff and just kind of throw it together and it
Hmm.
looks good in a static pose, and that's all you need. And so a lot of the stuff to do with Blender can do, like animations and rendering and all this stuff, you don't really have to worry about. It's just mostly making the shapes that are static. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's very cool. Well, thanks, Skeaze, for coming on and having a chat with us.
it's been great. It's the first time I've ever been, interviewed on a thing about this. It's been good. It's been really cool.
It's basically just an excuse to come on and talk about whatever your passion is, which is why I like it so much. You find people who are into the same thing as you, and you just give them a topic sentence, and kind of off they go.
You've nailed it.
Yeah,
Once you
yeah,
get me started talking about the thing, I'll talk forever about it.
yeah,
I have the problem, like I said, as a teacher, the students know you ask a question about something that they're into, and I'll just ramble on it forever.
yeah,
So
absolutely. Well, thanks again for coming on. And listeners, it's cults3d.com and go and find Skeaze. He's got a bunch of cool minis on there. Try Mystic Space on wargamevault.com. Nordic Weasel Games have plenty of other awesome games as well. My personal favorite is Starport Scum.
oh, Star Wars Scum is so
Oh,
good,
it
man.
holds a special place in my heart because I did a little bit of kind of copy editing on it a long, long time ago and kind of, met Ivan through that and everything. But yes, go and check out Skeaze, go and check out Nordic Weasel Games and Mystic Space. And yeah, until next time, let's roll some dice.